I think it's important to study history because history explains why the world is the way it is. I think it, of all the subjects, I think history explains better than many others. When you understand a nation or a region's history, you understand its people. And I think an understanding of history makes the world an easier place to live in.
King Solomon. The Hebrews also make an issue of black hair in Song of Solomon, where the king is being described by his Shulamite queen. My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. His head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. King James Bible, Cambridge edition. My lover is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. New International Version, 1984. The alternate translation of the adjective of the locks of hair as bushy and wavy gives the impression of thick hair with an inclination to curl. Clark's commentary has crisped or curled. When we research further, we discover that the Hebrew used here is taltalim, meaning branches of a palm tree, which is also used in the translations of Wycliffe and Douay Rheims. This gives the distinct impression of the hair having a stiff quality. In the New American Standard, it becomes cluster of dates, giving the impression of very short dreadlocks. This expression is interpreted in most other translations as bushy, wavy, etc. The quality of hair suggested by the original uninterpreted expression is clearly Afro, and yet Young's literal translation has flowing. It illustrates how everywhere in the Bible, where a description of a person is given, we must check the translation against the original Hebrew. This should cause us to question the white and ruddy part of the verse. The New Living Translation, 2007, has, in place of white and ruddy, dark and dazzling. It should come as a little surprise that the original Hebrew word Adom, red, related to Adamah, earth, so presumably red like earth, was not a reference to a pinkish color. It would be more accurate to say reddish-brown. This does not support white and ruddy, but supports dark. This interpretation is supported by the word Adamah in Akkadian, meaning dark, and Udma in Arabic, meaning brown like the soil, or very dark, in reference to complexion. Illuminating the Darkness, Blacks and North Africans in Islam by Hadid Akande, Taha Publishers, 2012, pages 15 to 16. The word which has been translated white in the King James Version and as radiant in the New International Version and dazzling in the New Living Translation is the Hebrew tzach. It occurs 4 times in the Bible and is translated twice as dazzling and once as scorching, making the former the primary interpretation. The translation of white does not occur anywhere else in the Bible and seems to be opportunistic. We therefore conclude that the more accurate translation is dark and dazzling, which goes well with locks that are like clusters of dates, and black. Solomon is also described by his queen in Solomon chapter 5, verse 15, as his countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. Lebanon was, and still is, a white-topped mountain, but since Solomon was clearly black-haired, this interpretation would not make sense. Lebanon and cedars were, and to a degree still are, synonymous. We are told of cedar, repeatedly mentioned by the sacred writers. The wood of it is solid, beautiful, inclining to a brown color, and possessing a strong aromatic smell. A gazetteer of the Old and New Testament, to which is added a Natural History of the Bible, Volume 2 by William Fleming, Edinburgh Printing and Publishing Company, 1838, page 541. We notice that inclining to a brown color is in agreement with dark and dazzling, and the reddish-brown color implied by the term Adom. It is also in agreement with the same complexion given to his father David in 1 Samuel, chapter 16, verse 12, also variously given as ruddy and dark. We can also see that the Lebanese cedar reference is not just to complexion, but also to possessing a strong aromatic smell, a theme which occurs in verse 13 of chapter 5. This same reddish-brown is alluded to in Lamentations 4, despite appearances to the contrary, as we shall soon see. In verse 14, however, it is said of Solomon, "His belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires." Some might be tempted to take this as a reference to white color, but the earlier part of the same verse compares his hands to gold rings set with beryl. The first part of verse 15 compares his legs to pillars of marble set upon sockets of fine gold. Every part of Solomon's body is being compared to something precious with no consistent color analogy. The ivory reference thus cannot be taken literally. This brings us to Lamentations chapter 4, verses 7 to 8. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Their visage is blacker than coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick. The question naturally arises, which color were the Israelites, snow white or coal black? Clearly, they could not have been both. The terms snow and milk are in reference to behavioral, non-physical qualities. We know this because purer is far more likely to describe a behavioral quality than one of complexion. We also know this because when ruddy is used, it is followed by the indicator in body to show that a physical quality is being introduced. This means what came before was not in reference to the body. Knowing that the term ruddy is from the Hebrew Adom, or red, like earth, makes the second verse easier to understand. Rubies can be reddish-brown. People of reddish-brown complexion will experience a skin darkening response to trauma, certain illnesses, and starvation. This darker color can be poetically compared to coal black. The medical term for this darkening is called hyperpigmentation and is a skin sign of starvation. Hyperpigmentation tends to be more acute in people with Fitzpatrick skin type, brown and dark brown. Now, with the benefit of this knowledge, we can see the majority context, like Lamentations 5, in which skin is described as black in the Bible, is that of famine and disease. My bowels boiled and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. Job, chapter 30, verses 27 and 30. In a population where the general complexion ranges from brown to dark brown, we would expect starvation-induced hyperpigmentation to result in complexions that approach coal black. Shulamite Queen. In verse 5 of chapter 1, one of Solomon's queens, identified only by the title Shulamite, declares, "I am black and comely, O ye ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own I have not kept. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. Many a black and white scholar have seen this as an apology for blackness and a plea for acceptance. But there is a problem. If she were apologizing for an unattractive feature, it is unlikely that she would have applied poetical repetition, as the tents of Kedar, black, as the curtains of Solomon, black. She would have emphasized her beauty only and not her color. This should cause us to look more carefully at the translation. The King James Version juxtaposes beauty with black, as explained in the African Heritage Bible footnotes. The King James Version, among others, reflects an adversative, but comely, despite the fact that the original Greek text uses the standard conjunction and. The original African Heritage Study Bible, King James Version, Reverend Kane Hope Felder, James C. Winston Publishers, 1993, page 991. The original Hebrew, from which the Greek translators interpreted and, simply had the word black followed by the word beautiful. The way it is written in Hebrew reminds us of the Arabic expression black is beautiful. The Shulamite queen says, "Look not upon me, because I am black." The only reason why you would ask people to look beyond a physical feature is because it is either very attractive or very not. In this respect, we discover it appears both from sacred and profane writers that black was a color held in great estimation among the ancients. It was, in their opinion, emblematical of the inscrutable nature of deity, which was probably the reason that many of their idols were painted of this color. In Homer, black eyes are celebrated as a distinguishing lineament in female loveliness. Illustrations of the Holy Scriptures in 3 parts, Volume 2, by George Paxton, Griggs, and Dickinson, 1822, page 41. The Shulamite queen seems to be saying, "Look beyond my beauty," which is equated with her blackness. When she gives the cause of her blackness as, "The sun hath looked upon me," she is referencing the ancient idea that black complexions came from being kissed or burnt by the sun. It has nothing to do with suntan, as some biblical commentators have tried to assert. The word for black used is shachar, meaning shiny black. The response of her mother's children is reminiscent of Cinderella's ugly sisters. Unchangeable blackness. The prophet Jeremiah in chapter 13, verse 23 of his self-titled book was quoted as having said, "Can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard his spots? Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil." Normally, only the question is quoted without the following command. The biblical commentators have historically done this in a social environment where black will automatically be given a negative interpretation. The implication is that the Ethiopian would change his skin if he could. What few have asked is, what has the Ethiopian's skin been compared to, and what is the value of that thing? Compare also with the theme of Jeremiah, chapter 2, verse 11. "Hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which doth profit them not." The Ethiopian's skin has been compared to leopard's spots, which were highly valued in ancient times for being a symbol of royalty and priesthood, connection to deity. What could be further from the negative than this? Only deity itself, and this is symbolized by the color black, as we read earlier. This is why the Ethiopian skin occurs first, indicating greater importance, and the leopard's spots second, because one indicates deity, while the other indicates connection to deity. In the command that follows, the parallel of the Ethiopian's skin and the leopard's spots are with doing good and not evil. In other words, if the Ethiopian cannot change his skin, nor the leopard his spots, you who is supposed to be good should not be evil as you are now. The evil being referred to is the Israelites losing connection to their deity by pursuing connection to deity through other peoples. This is the whole subject matter of the book of Jeremiah and was introduced in verse 2. God points out that nations do not change their gods, deity, connection to deity, and yet this is what the Israelites were doing. The parallel of the Ethiopian's skin, deity, and leopard's spots, connection to deity, is with a nation's gods, deity, and glory, connection to deity. God's point was that with the exception of the latter, these things are not supposed to change, and yet the Israelites were changing them. There is more to be said about the Ethiopian's skin. The Hebrew word used for Ethiopian was Cushi. The issue of unchanging black skin is best understood with this quotation from Mueller, 2012, in relation to the Cushite complexion. A significant observation about this ebony or blue-black color is that it does not change. All other African complexions change according to degree of exposure to sunlight. Hence, Africans become darker in summer and lighter in winter. The same is true of those of modern West Asian appearance and those of European appearance. The only complexion on Earth that does not change is the ebony. Mueller, 2012, pages 40 to 41. Conclusion. The first biblical humans in Genesis lived in Eden, near Havilah, Cush, and Ashur in East Africa. Noah was the only survivor from these East Africans after the Great Flood. His children, Ham, Shem, and Japhet, were also East Africans, but the descendants of Shem moved to West Asia, while the descendants of Japhet moved to Europe and the northern regions. The Shemites became the aboriginal West Asians, like the Elamites and Black Syrians who lived there before the coming of the Japhetites to that area. Nimrod, son of Cush, followed them later. This led to a gradual whitening of the West Asians during antiquity. From the Shemites also came Aber, the father of Joktan. Joktan was the father of the aboriginal people of Arabia, who can still be found in parts central and southern Arabia. They are of obvious black descent today, which strongly suggests Joktan, Aber, and Shem were supposed to be black in the mind of the original authors of Genesis. Abraham was descended from Shem and Aber, which strongly suggests that he too was black. His grandson Jacob used stones for pillows, suggesting that his hair was thick and afro enough to form a comfortable cushion between his scalp and the rocks. Jacob's son Joseph was mistaken for an Egyptian, African, by the rest of Jacob's family after being sold into slavery in his youth. Jacob's distant descendant was Moses, who was also mistaken for an Egyptian in Midian. Moses had his hand turned white as part of an impressive miracle. Turning dark brown skin into pale white skin would be the most impressive miracle of all. This strongly suggests that Moses had a dark brown complexion. The Levitical laws of the Hebrews exclude pale white to light brown from the general complexion range of the Hebrews. The Nazarites were described as red, like earth, clearly a dark red, which came to approximate a coal black as a result of famine. This is clearly a case of starvation-induced hyperpigmentation. Skin types brown and dark brown are more susceptible to this condition, and only dark brown skin type could produce a complexion that approximates coal. Other Old Testament figures like Job also complained of disease-induced hyperpigmentation. David and Solomon were described as the same red like earth as the Nazarites. All of this tells us that the ancient Hebrews of the Old Testament were a black people, like other Aboriginal peoples of West Asia. It gives credibility to the many paintings of Black Christ and Madonna that can be found in the oldest churches of Europe and Asia Minor. All Black Bible believers, non-believers, and atheists should be aware of this information to fight the anti-Black brainwashing that we have all received.
And don't you black people ever forget one thing. The man that helped Jesus carry that cross was a black man. And don't ever forget another thing. Jesus belongs to Africa as much as he does to Europe and Asia. He was born in that part of the world that touches Africa and Asia and Europe, and Jesus was not a white man like me. Nor was he as black as some of you. We don't know what the color of his skin, but it must have been a dark color like the people of his day. Because he was a man like them. Don't ever say it's a white man's religion.
Thank you for watching False Camera Action. Before you go anywhere, don't forget to click subscribe.